President Trump facing criticism for an Iran deal that some say goes too easy on the regime, but the president says, folks, it's not over. Watch.
Is the tax agreement now final, or are you still?
No, it's not final. It's a memorandum of understanding, and if I don't like it, we'll go back to shooting at them, dropping bombs on their head.
When do you expect the word?
If I don't like it, if they don't behave, we'll go right back to dropping bombs right smack in the middle of their head. Okay? Because they've misbehaved for 47 years.
Domenech joins me now. Ben, you have been critical of what we know about the deal. Did the president's remarks just then reassure you at all?
Well, it doesn't surprise me that we would have this response from Donald Trump, because I think that any deal that he cuts along the way to trying to get some final resolution of this conflict is one that is going to depend on the Iranians doing what they have said and committed to do, at least according to what we have reported about this deal. The problem is, as you know, David, the history of the Iranians doing that is very slim. And the fact is that I think that the president very well could be right back in, let's say, 6 months, 7 months, bombing Iran again, simply based on what we could expect from their behavior. The criticism that I and others have had is that the nature of the way this is being spun is they're not going to get anything, unless they actually meet their obligations. But the strait is going to be open right off the bat. Iranian oil is being sold right away. And that means that money is flowing back into the regime to rebuild everything that they've lost during this war. That's the problem from my perspective.
Well, there's another problem as to whether they are allowed to set tolls. Not only would that be a difficulty for the Middle East, but it could spread to other regions of the world. I mean, the Chinese and other countries might get similar thoughts about turning international shipping zones into toll zones.
Yeah, and I think that that's something that is a very real concern, especially considering the degree to which, the U.S. Navy is a dominant force. But our allies in Europe have basically allowed their navies and everything that they have there to degrade incredibly. They no longer have the kind of ability to project power. And so it all really depends on us. And I think that that's something that, could have some very negative effects. Look, we still are hearing from the administration that we haven't seen the final deal,
right,
that we haven't,
which
that
is
we
true.
Don't have the actual full text. And that's true. But everything that we've seen reported, if it's accurate, it raises concerns among people like me who feel like you should only go to war when you come out at the end with something that's a lot better for the American people and for the American
Is
interest.
it possible that the president is accepting this feedback in order to tweak the memorandum, which is not really a peace deal? Is he taking that feedback and might he incorporate it into the final product?
The president listens to a lot of people. I hope that he's taking that feedback because I think that there are a lot of people in his ear, and not just the Iran hawks. The thing that I think people need to be concerned about is, it's the John Kennedys, the John Thunes, and people like that, not Lindsey Graham necessarily, who the president should be listening to in this moment. And there are a lot of America First politicians who are still concerned about this deal, who are very loyal to the president, and were never really down to do this from the get-go, but want this to be a good solution that can stand the test of time.
Ben, before you go, I want to bring it back home to the primaries. The president's primary winning streak got a hit with his favored candidate for Georgia governor losing, but 3 of his endorsements did win. Kevin Hern in Oklahoma, Barry Moore in Alabama, Mike Collins in the Georgia Senate primary. Of course, Trump's not in the running in the midterms, but is this, in fact, a kind of a referendum on President Trump?
I think that this is absolutely a referendum on him, and I think that Democrats want it to be that, and that may have turned out to be a mistake. We've actually seen some signs in polling data that that voters believe that Democrats are just too focused on being negative about the president. They aren't actually running on any particular agenda other than opposing him. And so their entire agenda when it comes into the midterms in this fall, it depends on Donald Trump being unpopular and that his candidates aren't able to make the case for why they should have these jobs. Personally, I think Republicans might be able to pull a rabbit out of the hat this year and not have the type of historic wave that we thought perhaps a year ago was possible.
That would be interesting. Ben Domenech, great to see you. Thank you so much.